the studio. Hello, sir. How are you? We didn't scare you away.
No, good morning. Good to still be here.
And of course, please join me in saying good morning to our Minister of Rami, the Honorable Patrice Gumbs. Good morning,
Good
sir.
morning, Dr. Saw. Good morning, Emil. Thank you guys for having me. Good morning, listeners and viewers.
And we're glad. I know it's funny, radio and like video and TV now,
I know
all
it
like
gets
one and
very
the same.
complicated. Viewers,
Oh my God.
listeners,
Like nobody
bloggers.
nobody used to care what I looked like.
Yeah, no.
Now I come in and if God forbid I look like I just rolled out of bed, it's a problem. If I need a haircut, God help us. Well, actually, you can't tell when I need a haircut. So,
I need a haircut, so it's okay.
Patrice, you and I are gonna get along just fine.
Yeah.
Sorry, I digress. Oh, I know we want to talk a little bit about the landfill. What's going on?
Yeah, so what's going on? Quite a lot. But the first things first is that this Wednesday, September 3rd, we have a public consultation at Bel Air Community Center, 6 to 9. Everyone is invited. And I mean everyone. It's going to be, some aspects will be formal, some aspects will be, a bit of science. But I think what's very important is that the impact of the landfill is to everyone in St. Martin. So yes, there'll be parts involved in speeches, but we really want a cross-section of society to come out and hear what the plans are for the future of waste management, and in particular, what the landfill will look like in a couple of years. This is, of course, a trust fund, World Bank Trust Fund project. It's funded out of the 550 million euros, 580 US dollars from the Dutch government following Hurricane Irma. And this project, I believe personally, is one of the sort of the capstones of this trust fund because it covers so much. It covers waste, it covers behavioral change, it impacts the quality of life, and it also impacts our products. So I think this is really important.
How
for our
much of the
country.
trust fund is allocated towards the solid waste management?
Yep.
What's the budget?
So this particular project, because there's been several different projects that led up to this. We had first, of course, the boat removal in the lagoon. Then we had fire suppressions. This particular project has about 60 million US dollars earmarked for it.
Wow, and this is to figure out how we make the mountain go away. Is
Yeah.
that the?
So no, actually no. I think it's one of those things where over time, what this landfill will become, because formerly it's a dump. It's
Right.
not a landfill formally. We kind of use the word interchangeably, but formally it's a dump. But based on what studies have said, we've managed it relatively okay for what we have. There were some ideas in the very beginning to have that entire landfill removed, landfill mine basically, mining. And when they looked at the numbers and the costs in terms of what you can do with it, the prices were astronomical to actually have all of that removed. So they said, okay, the best bet is let's clean it up, let's close it down, and let's find a solution in terms of long-term waste and also to change the behavior how people look at waste. One of the biggest challenges is that landfill, people always look at the landfill as a government problem. And I tell people all the time, yes, governments has a big role to play in what it's become, but I think the real issue and real challenge has been changing behavior. Landfills grow because people consume and people dispose. They don't grow because government puts a landfill down. So what government now has to do is look at basically, a large part of this project really in the second phase is actually looking at how you change behavior, ideas around recycling, reducing diversion. Simple. You have a lot of concrete waste. You have a big construction sector here in St. Martin. People are always renovating, always building. A lot of that waste can be crushed, used into road applications. They can be used into making sand. We've even seen Aruba where they're making bricks, for example, with this dust. Greenery, shrubbery. We're constantly gardening, constantly, excavating hills, etc. A lot of that green waste can be used for agriculture through compost. We've seen, for example, the Minister of Theatre is really focusing on agriculture. This can be a circular economy creation, basically putting that concrete debris and that greenery into actually a commodity. Waste has a value, and we're trying to commodify that value instead of just throwing it into the landfill and creating more and more of an eyesore than we currently have.
Will make the mountain get bigger. That's all. The mountain is the middle of town is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
So the idea is we're going to sort of remold that mountain, so to speak. At some points, we're going to
When you say remove it or
remold it.
remold it,
So basically, at
What does
some
that mean?
points, at some points of the landfill are extremely steep and dangerous, and they risk collapse into the pond, which is an environmental concern. It's also a question of some areas aren't safe to be necessarily on anymore. So the idea is to remold it in terms of rescope, reshape it. At some places, make the steepness less, and then eventually close the entire thing. grasped. We also have some long-term visions to have solar panels on there to help sort of the renewable energy initiative. And then the bigger project around this basically is a new way as looking at waste. So, like I said earlier, the whole idea of reducing recycling, or even looking at potential waste energy solutions. There are some concerns around that because one of the biggest challenges in waste energy is you constantly need garbage to fuel the fire. We're doing that in partnership with not only just ourselves, but also with the Friend Sites, Imbart's, Seba Station, as far as Guadeloupe. Because in the end, the reality is this is not a unique to St. Martin problem. The smaller islands, they're doing quite a lot in terms of recycling reduction already. Some of them are actually exporting. The bigger islands they have multiple possible locations. We don't have that. And we can't think of anywhere else to put a new landfill. So the idea is really and truly, we have to find a solution that basically manages all the waste we're going to continue to have throughout the time, because we're not going to stop consuming. But we have to address.
Coming down the hill by Little Bay, and I get the beautiful view of town. One side I look out and I see the cruise ships and all of Great Bay, and the other way I kind of look at Mount Dump.
Yep.
10 years from now, what am I looking at?
So 10 years from now, you're going to see essentially still a mountain, but it's going to be completely closed and green. That's the long-term plan. And you're also going to look at basically a massive change in how we look at that dump will not grow anymore. That's kind of it. We're putting a cap on it. We're trying to make sure that it doesn't grow, but it's not going to grow anymore, period. And to make that happen, you have to look at diversion and other solutions. There's a lot of people doing a lot on a very small scale currently when it comes to recycling, when it comes to scrap metal, when it comes to plastic recycling or reduction. The biggest step in this now is, how do you make that national? How do you take those small scale initiatives that can actually manage basically that we put everything that currently goes into landfill will go somewhere else, back into the roads, back into agriculture. It'll turn into energy, for example. And that's kind of what you want, because the cost of reducing, the cost of removing that whole mountain now, there's better practices and use for that money than taking it away. I think ideally everyone would have liked to see that go away. But I think that was a very initial idea in 2017, right after Hurricane Irma. Sorry, 2018, 2019, when this project kind of evolved into what it is now. And then the studies came in and said, the cost of reducing all of this, the fact that how you've dumped over the years, you have a mixture of concrete waste in one place, you basically have batteries in some other places. So the entire mix isn't necessarily easy to mine. And you're going to spend a lot of money doing it and then still have not really addressed the bigger problem, which is basically how you're actually looking at waste and waste management.
So, I'm going to go back to where I grew up, right, in Connecticut. And I remember when the whole concept of recycling first started, and the town mandated, and the town is about the size of St. Martin. The town mandated, we're going to give you a little blue bin, and every week and our trash collection is once a week, not like here every day. God willing, they come every day. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But once a week on your designated day, you put your pail out by the side of the road, and with your trash, and then next to it you put the blue bin with your recyclables. And with the recyclables, you had your plastic, you had your metal, and then they wanted you to put your newspaper inside of a paper bag, and a brown paper bag, and that would then they would come and they'd pick up your trash, and then a little later the recycling truck would come along and they would take the metal and put it in one bin, they would take the plastic and put it in another, and put the paper in another. And it took probably 3 years to get people on board. And and what they would do is the people would drive. The town would send people around, and they put a sticker on your bin if you didn't do it right.
Yeah.
And for the first year, and then ultimately they started to fine people, and then people finally got on board, and now it's just, what do you mean you don't recycle, right? It just, the plastic goes here, the paper goes there, the metal goes there, and I think if we could get to a weekly trash pickup in each district, where people kept their trash pail in their yard, not at the end of the street. And your designated day, you wheel your bin out. You put your recycling bin out, and
Yeah.
we could be much. It's a behavioral
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. So exactly, it's behavioral change is the biggest challenge we have currently to our waste problems. You know, Sock, I'll tell you, there's been sometimes a couple of months ago where I would sit down, very random, but sit down and observe behavior at certain bins. There was one time I even approached a gentleman about basically what he was throwing out.
Did he know who you were? Did he recognize you?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah. What he was throwing out, because it wasn't necessarily just what he was throwing out; it's also how he was throwing it out. It was basically just throwing in bags of whatever material, and also just throwing it on the floor next to the bin. So I told him, this is not what I was supposed to do, and blah, blah, and it began quite friendly. And then basically, I told him to pick it back up and put it in his truck. And then he had a couple of choice words, and of course, I returned some choice words back to
I
him.
wouldn't give it anything to
But
there.
it shows you that even having the minister of Rami come and tell you, listen, this isn't necessarily the right way to do it, people still don't care. And the only way to really affect and impact behavior on a short term is fines. So another part of this project also is about financial framework and legal framework changes. Currently, and that's the thing too. A lot of the haulers are also faced with the fact that they have to clean up by the contract a certain area around the land, the bins. But simple just throw whatever wherever, and that also caused a lot of problems as well in terms of the contract management. But I think it boils down to a large part of the issues are based on education, which is what we're doing now as well, not only with the legal and financial changes we're going to be making as well to make sure that we have a sort of a stronger tool in terms of managing, but also we have a massive campaign called Think Green, which is really about, as a central message, it takes all of us. Because I can have all the garbage collectors work perfectly according to schedules. I can have all the regulations put in place. But if people just decide to throw a bottle anywhere or dump a fridge where it says clearly no household appliances,
The problem.
this is where the success becomes a failure.
So I have a couple questions for you, Minister. There's Sak and I. We talk about it all the time. Actually, there's a real benefit to being late to the game.
Mm-hmm.
That we no longer need to be smart or innovative. We just need to figure out
Follow.
who else has done this,
Exactly.
done it well,
Mm-hmm.
and copy what they've done.
Exactly.
Who is your role model in terms of who's done it well to say that's what we want for St. Maarten?
Yeah. So actually, and a large part of what we've been doing the last couple of months has been exactly doing that. Traveling to very similarly scaled islands and experiences. We had one that was a bit more out of context, but to look around and see what everyone is doing. I'll tell you, Aruba has been very interesting in terms of what they're doing. They have completely, at some points, taken the waste management out of government hands and given it to a lot of third parties. We're also envisioning that kind of model where we say this person will have an agreement or concession with government in terms of managing things like plastics, whatever, X, Y, Z. Then you go even more rudimentary, someplace as simple as Simbarts. I think they have a space of about 4,000 square meters where they basically have little bays, the trucks come in, and they just sort every single thing. The population is significantly smaller, but I mean, you can scale this up. Same way you can also scale Aruba back down.
So
and what they do as well is that they actually use their garbage, they burn their garbage, and out of that whole process, they're able to make potable water in the whole entire system of what they do with the thing. So again, it's looking at St. Bart's is drier than St. Maarten. They have a water shortage issue. They also have much less space than St. Maarten, and they've turned their waste into commodity. And the idea is to do something similar with our waste here as well.
So I will challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
I've sent you a video on Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
Singapore, for me, and this goes back from the time when I was an SHTA minister, whatever. I've always looked at Singapore to see how they do it. Their tourism authority, just across the board, legislation, healthcare, everything. So they have a landfill there called the Semakau landfill, and I think they have. For me, that is the role model to follow. So next time, I'll invite you in to have a discussion about just exactly that. Singapore's got a huge population. They're about the size of Dominica.
Mm-hmm.
They're an island. They have different scale, but the same challenges I think that we have. And I think they've worked it out. But what's become clear as I watched that, there's always going to be some sort of residue, right? You have your construction debris,
Exactly.
bricks, concrete will not burn,
No.
right? You're going to have either an incineration, waste to energy. So you're going to try and reduce as much as possible, right? Take out plastics, aluminum, etc., recycle. But you're still going to be left with something.
Exactly.
If you cap off the dump now, where will that waste
Yeah.
go?
So
What's left?
Yeah, and these are the discussions we're having because essentially, in the idea of reduce, recycle, you're always going to exactly
There's
have
something.
And these are the discussions we're having now with the Netherlands because sort of being part of the steering committee of the World Bank and the Maarten government is this has to go somewhere.
So is
we
there a
don't
plan
have-
where?
Yes, that's being finalized with potentially the idea of whatever system you use, for example, if you look at waste energy takes a lot more of that away. You still have that concrete waste, but what do you do with the stuff that you can't actually use? That's still in discussion happening.
So you haven't identified a place yet.
No, not concretely.
So watch the video
Yeah.
for Semicount because
Okay.
they're expanding their land restrained just like St. Martin. So I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
The $60 million that the trust fund is allocated towards your project, is that sufficient to fund either an incinerator or waste to energy power
So,
plant?
We definitely know that 60 million, we're going to have to supplement that, definitely. The intervention itself, the physical intervention, the landfill itself, to make it safe, to close it off, to cap it off, everything, that's going to take most of that budget. We still have the bigger project around the long-term management of the landfill because the idea is the first intervention physically is going to start happening in the last quarter of next year. You're going to start seeing things moving on the landfill in terms of physically. We know already that it's not going to be done in time for the end of the trust fund. So this has to continue beyond 2028 when the trust fund officially ends. The rough idea currently is 2032 for the complete closure financing the landfill. On top of that, everything else we want to do in terms of diversion, in terms of other initiatives, that needs more money. We are having discussions with the Dutch government, of course, about what that could potentially look like, be it a reallocation of funds from within the existing trust fund that have not been used or won't be used in time for the closure, or potentially would have to look at taking a loan to take that continuation. So these discussions we're having, but one of the things we do have to deliver on is some concrete progress before we can sort of have those commitments from the Dutch in terms of what they're willing to do and fund.
So we just had a discussion before you about cost of living and the need to reduce the price of electricity.
Yep.
So even if there's a savings on electricity prices, that may very well get overshadowed by what's going to come in the way of a tipping fee.
Yeah.
So that your vision is that every household will now have to pay something to deal with their garbage.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I understand it. I understand why you need to do it. But as people are looking at cost of living, so it's just increasing cost of living.
Yeah.
Have you considered how the impact of that's going to be?
So it's something that we've been discussing, and I think it's something that we have to also look at from the point of view of you need to prioritize and understand the quality and type of life you want to live. Any new fee, any new tax is never attractive. It's never popular. No one wants to introduce it. And this is why we are where we are today. The landfill was allowed to continue to grow because no one wanted to say enough is enough. We need to actually, like every other country in the world, including even the front side, start putting a separate contribution, separate payment for waste collection.
How will that be collected?
So we're looking at several options. One of the the tipping fee of the landfill is basically for every sort of, let's say, ton you bring in, you pay a certain amount. That's for the entrance directly onto the landfill. That will probably go towards the waste haulers who would pay that, and other people who kind of have access or will get access to the landfill. Most people ideally will not be entering the landfill anymore like currently happens. What currently happens is you just drive onto the landfill, you are told where to go, you dump it, and you drive away. And that's completely free. Nowhere in the world does that happen. And if it does happen, you don't really want to be there. The household contributions, we are looking at the potential for putting onto utility bill, a separate discussion, given that we have to address those challenges, right, that's existing.
Good luck with
Um,
that.
yeah,
They can't get the current bills right.
yeah. But, this is what it's kind of the general standard for what you do with contributions to your household.
So, I'm a big believer that doing the right thing should be the path of least resistance.
Mm-hmm.
You need to recognize when people are doing the right thing.
Exactly.
So in your formula, if SOC is a waste generator, right? Just generates lots of waste. I compost, I'm pulling out my aluminum cans, my plastic bottles, I'm taking my newspapers to the vet for the dogs to use. Is my fee going to be the same as his fee? Or are you going to find some way to reward the people who are reducing their volume?
Yeah, so it's actually a different thing. For example, when it comes to waste collection, different things like commercial versus residential rates. There's also going to be different things, for example, of persons who, by nature, produce and give more to the community, they'll have to pay more. That's a clear differential that has
But
to
you're
happen.
talking about generalizations by
Mhm.
sort of industry. I'm
Mhm.
talking about behavior. One person is,
You're my
doesn't
next.
care.
You're
right?
my next door neighbor. You
Mhm.
produce
10 times the volume that he does because
Mhm.
he's recycling and
Mhm.
composting. Are you going to make a price difference between the two?
So basically, what it is that what currently exists is in law, because is that there is a set standard already as in the contracts as to what you can put out. The problem is it's not maintained because there's no mechanism to actually control it. So that's one. And two, residential waste has to be controlled. So for example, in Aruba, there's a certain amount that is charged to your household that then is collected by the company. Everything else above that, you have to figure out how you get rid of that yourself. So what is going to be charged to the household is going to be for X amount. If you have something that goes above, you need to figure out how
So
you
what
get
you're
rid of
saying
that.
is each household would have an allocation as to the amount that they're allowed to throw away.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, you're going to have to take
Yeah.
care of it yourself.
And people don't realize that's currently what is there by law. You're allowed to put out once a week a certain amount of cubic meters of bulky items. So that can be once a week. If you have a small fridge or a fridge or whatever, you can put it outside once a week. And that is contractually supposed to be picked up by the hauler. What people do, they just throw it out, and whenever it gets picked up, it gets picked up because there's no way really of enforcing these current rules and regulations. And the way how you do it basically is if this is what you're supposed to do and it's not picked up, just leave it there. And the reality is we have to have a stronger mechanism in terms of enforcement in St. Martin.
So I'm going to give you a current example. This actually comes out of our last week's press conference.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke about the abandoned vehicles on the road. So you have people who bring cars in or buy used cars, and instead of disposing of it responsibly, they just pull the license plates off and walk away.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then you mentioned that government pays quite a bit of money
Mhm.
in costs to remove those vehicles, and that VIN numbers are very often removed. Well,
Mhm.
so I did a little research. There was 2 vehicles on the parking at Pondfield Road across from the subway on the Pondfield,
abandoned.
abandoned.
Mm.
Both had spray painted numbers for removal, and there were the VIN numbers. I
Mhm.
took pictures of. Actually, I sent it to your
Okay, I
phone.
have to check
So
every
you have,
line of messages. Okay,
yeah, you have to check your messages. So again, my taxpayer money is being used
Mhm.
by you to go throw those away. When the VIN numbers are there, presumably they're in the database at government. You can find out who owned those vehicles and charge them
Mhm.
the costs to tow those vehicles
Mhm.
away. They're there, the VIN number.
Mhm.
So why doesn't government? So if you don't do it now, what's going to change in the future
So-
when you're talking about this? So
Yeah,
do it
so-
now.
Yeah. So it's several things because we've had this sort of discussion several times. People basically say use a VIN number. A lot of people do off the record sales of things and don't actually get their car registered.
But
So-
try.
No, it's been tried. Prime example, the boat in Simpson Bay. That boat was purchased.
No.
on
But let's
record.
take the two vehicles. I
No,
sent
no,
you the
but-
pictures of the
No,
VIN.
but
Let's
but we need to we need to compare what's going on currently. Someone can sell a car, have a car driven, and it happens all the time. can drive a car around, like how they can buy a boat, and on record, the boat is owned by this person, but someone else actually owned the boat because it was already sold.
But that
The
car
similar-
shouldn't be able to go through the registration at the beginning of every year
Yeah.
to get a license plate. They have to get their insurance. They have to do
Yeah.
their inspections. So if the controls on the road are
Mhm.
in place, those
Mhm.
vehicles shouldn't be operating.
So again, the issue again is enforcement because you
Yes.
don't catch every car. That's one. And I think two, just to clarify, Bromley picks up car wrecks, not abandoned cars. I think that's something to always look at. That's kind of legal, whatever. But in the end of the day, it's a question of, for the most part, the system works. There's always these loopholes that come around where people are selling cars, and let's be honest, people are driving. I mean, it's less and less now, but people are driving around the island with plates that are either old. There's even foreign plates. There's plates from St. Bart's. I mean, what do you do? And that's where it comes in again about vehicle registration and sharing information.
So indeed,
Mhm.
enforcement is key.
Yep.
With the scooters, the bicycle, the motorcycles on the road, vehicles operating without insurance, right? We've seen people stopped with falsified driver's licenses. So people throwing garbage out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Enforcement, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But the system that you're creating is going to be a system that relies even heavier
Yep.
on enforcement. So if wouldn't it be good to show people now
Mhm.
that there is enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
so that we have more trust, and that when you come with a new system, that it's just in line with
Mhm.
what you're working on?
For sure. And I think, again, it boils down to the fact of two things. Some parts of government are able to enforce, like justice. The police can stop you and give you a fine. The police can stop you and they can arrest you. Vromi can't do that. Vromi doesn't have the legal basis currently to issue fines. That's kind of a big part of what this project is. In the past, a lot of the Vromi inspectors had what's called BAFPO certification. So basically, they were able to kind of issue fines with a fine, etc. That no longer exists. There's a new system in place. We're actually seeing how we can combine that new evolved system with what we're looking at, basically administrative enforcement. That basically gives not only the Vromi inspectors, but also everybody else who, as the minister or ministry designates, able to enforce. So we're even looking at things like the Nature Foundation when it comes to enforcement on the water and environmental acts, because people also dump in along the coastline as well.
My understanding, and I think we even had this discussion with the President of Parliament, is that there is currently the ability for you to collect via administrative fines. The law was passed, and that you can, as different ministries, enforce administrative fines
Yeah.
and collect those fines.
No. So what did pass was a very big blanket LB,
That's
LB,
good, yeah.
I think it was LB. MB actually passed by the then Minister Vromi. There was issues in that fine, in that sort of decree, and that is what we're currently amending.
Okay.
There is currently no administrative fines ability for Vromi. What happens and what you can do is that we can send a fine to via the prosecutor has to be involved via the prosecutor, and that's a long legal trajectory because obviously they have bigger things going on than a fine of 50 guilders or 500 guilders for somebody who put something wrongfully there. So we have to involve the justice chain in order to basically control what currently happens. The same thing happens, for example, with inspection of works ongoing. Someone is illegally constructing, we issue a warning, then we order a stop, then we order removal, and guess what? It's just paper. We don't have that mechanism unless we then call the police and start a whole entire process, which is legal process. By the time that process happens, the house is pretty much built. So this is why we have to take that control back into Vromi with administrative fine enforcement.
Well,
We're starting to run short on time because I know you have a hard stop at 10. I wanted to change gears and talk a little bit about the dreaded season and hurricane preparation.
Yeah, but and I think in the same thread of what Emil is saying, hurricane season is upon us. We're speaking about garbage, speaking about wrecks, we're speaking about a lot of things which are potential debris in storms. We noticed that during the passing of Hurricane Erin, a lot of people, despite the government in Vromi putting out last collection at 6 p.m. because, hey, the people who have to pick up the garbage and the people at the yard also have families and homes as well,
right.
To take care of. People were still dumping garbage way into the night.
Mhm.
And I saw it because we were out and sort of doing little inspections.
My neighbors
Just
looked at me like I was crazy when I brought. By the way, the end of my street is a green bin, which didn't come from Rami because every time I called Rami to get a green bin, nobody bothered to answer the phone.
okay,
Um, uh,
but
so
please let me know.
if you could
Yeah,
get me a green bin, I'd love one.
yeah.
But I went and bought a green bin and I actually wheeled my green bin back into my yard because I didn't want it to become a projectile.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody look, my neighbors all look at me like I'm insane.
Yeah, but but, and that's the kind of behavioral change we're talking about because at the end of the day, um, the car wrecks that are there are a health hazard. There's some areas which have complained a lot about rodent infestation, and they're all from these cars. Putting a fridge and pieces of plywood into a bin at 9 p.m. and there's a potential hurricane coming at 5 a.m. Guess what? It's going to end up in somebody's home potentially, or it's going to end up on the road. And what you see is that people then take those images and say, "Oh, what is Romy doing?" Well, Romy told you don't put it up because we were stopping collection, and then everybody then blames the government. They don't look at themselves and look at how they're accountable for what's going on. That's why this whole entire thing, September 3rd, is come out because we need your feedback. We need the population to buy in to what it is we're trying to do because the slogan, short and sweet, it takes all of us. We can't do it alone. In the end of the day, just everyone be aware we're in hurricane season. Romy has been very much working in cleaning thanks to all the contractors and the haulers who have been really good in the last couple of months in terms of making sure we're very well prepared for the hurricane season. Um, and of course, finally, just looking at it's a simple thing, the island does as well as we want it to do. Play your part, keep it clean. And then, of course, September 3rd, come out and share your voices of what you want. The idea of September
So
3rd,
September 3rd, Bel Air Community Center.
Community Center,
What time?
6 to 9.
So
Okay.
just a quick question on that. Are you going to record it and broadcast it later?
Yes.
Because I don't know if I could be there that
No, that's
evening.
fine. And we've also commented also because, again, this is what part and parcel of doing our World Bank project is. You have to make sure that everybody's able to connect. So it's going to be also virtual. Online, we're going to have questions being taken there as well. I do believe there's a question opportunity from online as well. And of course, in the end, we're going to have a survey in a couple of months to kind of engage people thought of the whole idea and what they want to.
But you will record it so
Yes,
people can watch
it's live.
after the fact
Yes,
also.
it's live. It's going to be recorded after the fact.
Okay.
And come with an open mind. I think I want to stress this a lot. This landfill, this dump, is a multi-generational, everybody knows about it kind of issue. The idea of September 3rd is basically there's going to be the long-term vision from the government side, and then there's also going to be the kind of science behind what it is.
Mm-hmm.
The ideas presented are not sort of whims and fancies and opinions. It's really based on science-based evidence. That's really what you need. So, all comments, all commentary, be open, but also be respectful, but be critical. I think it's very important that we come with an open mind as to what it's going to be. Realize that this is a long-term process, but it's starting for the very first time in decades. It's finally starting. And of course, scan to RSVP. Let us know you're coming so we can make adequate preparations. And everybody's welcome. I mean, literally everybody, because everyone has a stake in this. It's not just, the usual crowd of the government officials and a couple of, Facebook concerned persons. Really want everybody from, the person selling ribs on the side of the road. They need to know what's going to happen with food waste in a couple of years. It's really a cross-cutting and very inclusive moment to kind of see where we're going to go in the future with waste management. It's Maarten.
And that is, give me the date one more time.
Yep, September 3rd, 6 to 9 p.m., Bel Air Community Center. Please RSVP and come out in full force and have your voices be heard.
And Patrice, I can't thank you enough. Minister of Rami, the Honorable Patrice Gumbs. Thank you for
Thank you
joining
very
us.
much. Thank you very much.
Promise me
I'll
you'll
definitely
come.
look at your videos, Emil. Thank
Yes,
you. Yeah,
thanks.
Promise me you'll come back.
Yes.
Oh.
Whenever you want to have me, I'll be.
You're always welcome, and have a chocolate croissant. You'll feel better.
No. I'm back on my regime.
Chicken.
So. Thanks, though.
Chicken. It's 1 minute after the hour of 10 o'clock, and I have managed to break things. Let's see if I can fix them. Oh, never a dull moment. Today is indeed Thursday. I'm ready for the weekend. How about you? Let's see if we can get everything back in sync here. Me and the computer not liking each other today, but we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there one way or another. One way or another. Anyway, let's see what else we can do this morning. We've got lots to take care of on the program. Please stick around. More Fresh Air in the Morning is on the way. It is just 2 minutes after the hour of 10 o'clock.